Hello everyone, and welcome to another installment of Are We Geniuses? A place for people who think they know everything to realize that none of us know anything. I'm Sierra Parr.
And I'm Jacqueline Royer.
And we're joined today by our good friend and fellow anxious person, Jules Pennington.
Hi, thanks for having me, and thanks for choosing me for this particular episode.
And they're with us as we ask ourselves the question, are we geniuses?
Or are we just mentally ill?
Whether it's desperately trying to be chill while making plans or interacting with the cashier at the grocery store, I spend a majority of my life feeling anxious.
Or for me, calling my doctor without a panic attack or pulling myself from bed to go to work in the morning.
A lot of the time I ask myself, why am I like this? But I know I'm not alone. As of 2021, 19% of all Americans in the US were suffering from mental illness, according to Mental Health America. Today, we're going to get deep as we talk about how mental illness has affected our perceptions as college students and how the world is reacting to increased transparency regarding mental health. But first, let's talk about what mental illness feels like to us.
Okay, so we're just going to start with a pretty open-ended conversation about our lives being mentally ill and some of the ways that it's impacted us. So I'll start with Sierra, because she's a host, so Jules can have some time to wade into the muddy waters of podcasting. So Sierra, when did you first start feeling like something was different for you mentally?
As a kid, I had really bad separation anxiety is where it kind of all started. And I was like super attached to my parents for like a really long time after that. In school, when I started school, I really hated it. And I would like cry I was one of those kids who would like cry every day in kindergarten. Yeah. And that like makes you not popular.
Who would have guessed?
I know. But yeah, so I think it started a lot with that separation anxiety, and then it kind of just continued on into my perfectionist tendencies. And I was never really like a very social person, so that kind of spiraled into a lot of social anxiety. And then just overall, lots of anxiety.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that there was a time when you felt it was most like out of control, or when it started to like really ramp up?
I would say, okay, this is going to make me sound like a psychotic person, but that's kind of what this episode is about.
I mean, we're all psychotic.
But like in high school, if I wasn't asleep by a certain time,
oh my God, same.
I would literally lose my marbles.
No, literally me too. I would scream cry.
If I wasn't like asleep, like my eyes were actually closed, I was unconscious by like 10 at the latest, like the very latest. I could not sleep. If I was up later than that, sleep was not happening because I would freak myself out so much that I couldn't fall asleep.
Did you have to get up early?
Yes, but not so early. Like nowadays, I live on a very, very weird schedule. I work at Starbucks for all
That's
of our...
That's a callback from the first episode.
For all of our listeners at home, I have to wake up every morning at 3:45 a.m. that I work. Not every morning of my life, but most of them. So I usually go to bed around like 9:30, but there are nights when I don't go to sleep until midnight, and it's just the way of life. So it's really not anything about like sleep deprivation. I feel like I got into this pattern where I like had insomnia for a little while, and I don't know if it was because I was anxious about life or like anxious about falling asleep, but I just like could not sleep. It was really bad.
Do you think your parents ever formally recognized that there was something different?
It was always kind of, and still kind of is, used as like an insult against me, where they go like, well, if you weren't so anxious all the time, or like, I know you're anxious, so I didn't want to do this. My mom in particular really likes to attribute things to my anxiety that are not because of that. She diminishes actually very real concerns that I have as me just being anxious, which is not something I care for, but...
And you'd say that anxiety is like the only thing that you're really dealing with?
I would say yeah, for the most part. And I'm not medicated for it. I don't know that I should, like, I don't know that I should be. I talked to a therapist about it, but not like, I've never gotten any like psychiatric help. I have a very baseline level of anxiety all the time. But then I have like episodes where like periods of my life, there are things happening that are very like turbulent or like uncertain. And those things make me very, very anxious, and they trigger my anxiety to the point where like most of my life is like very frazzled.
Yeah, that's That's rough.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing, Sierra. I
You're
appreciated that. Okay, Jules, do you feel comfortable now that
Loose.
you've listened to somebody
A
else?
little bit, a little nervous.
Okay, don't be nervous.
It's a very like raw topic, I feel like. Okay, when I like definitely put the thought of, oh, maybe I'm mentally ill in my brain was around like 5th grade, middle school years. And that might have just been like the culture I was in, the people I was with, getting more access to the internet. But I think back, and like Sierra was talking about, I was one of those kids who would cry like nonstop, like every day. Everything set me off. And I like reflect that now back on that now, and I'm like, that was not quite normal. And I brought it up to my mom recently, and she felt so bad about it, and I was like, I'm sorry. It just happens, and it doesn't.
I think something that kind of plays heavily into this is that all three of us sitting at this table are eldest daughters.
I could talk about that for a while. I think, but definitely daughter socializes differently than being an older brother, and men will get mad at me for bringing that up.
No, but it's true,
it's
because
a huge thing.
It's because there's this like idea from the parents that you're like this free mom.
Yeah, like a caretaker.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, it's definitely interesting.
And you don't want to be the person that caused a hiccup. That weird need to like not be problematic is really tied to being like the eldest.
Yeah, and not take up space.
Exactly.
You know, you're supposed to like make that room for your siblings, your parents. Kind of upsetting, but
it's sad.
Yeah. So that's
Reality.
definitely like my anxiety. Like I said, I recognized it earlier on than I think most people, and I'm kind of grateful for that. I think a lot of people get to college and realize, oh my God, I don't know how to deal with these feelings. And I think it's very easy for like our generation to get anxious, to get depressed, and like for college students in particular. It was nice that I caught it a little early on and really pushed my parents to like get me some help, because I needed that, and now I feel like I can manage a bit more than like I see, and like it's not a new thing for me, so I feel like old timer, you know, and in a way, like obviously
Geriatric age.
Yeah, literally, I'm like, oh, here we go again, you know, but it's like a panic attack.
The Grand Theft Auto meme. Oh shit, here we go again.
And it's like getting back into bed. Yeah, you get it.
Yeah. So your parents like acknowledged that for you, and
it took a while, and I know I won't get too deep into this because this is like a whole nother thing, but like from a cultural aspect too, I think people of color we're kind of socialized again to ignore that part, because you know there's so much other shit we need to be dealing with, like, you know, racism and discrimination, and like figuring out the American dream. And I think just like being able to talk about it more is so important for all people, because it is something that affects everyone. Everyone has a brain, everyone has struggles. So
I think that it's an important conversation to have, because there's a lot of that can kind of cascade into bigger problems down the line with mental illness if it's not addressed.
Yeah.
And if you're in a culture where like you don't acknowledge when there's problems, that can be really harmful, because you can become like a 40-year-old person with like kids, and you're like, oh
and then we start
brain.
thinking about like generational trauma,
let's
and how
not
that, you know, perpetuates.
Let's not open that can of worms.
No, not at all.
Also, I've dated around a lot too, and that's been an interesting thing to always bring up, you know, like, I'm mentally ill. How do you feel about this?
Is that okay with you?
Is that... or
do I have your permission to occasionally freak out?
I would kind of use it as an excuse at points, not in like a toxic way, but like if someone was being too forward, I'd be like, oh, just so you know, I'm also mentally ill. You know, and I wouldn't say it like that.
Illness.
You know, but yeah, I think it definitely impacts all your relationships, and definitely your relationship with yourself.
For sure.
How you seek help, how you seek comfort with your friends. It's good to be reflecting and introspecting on that. Not too much, I'd say.
Being able to rationalize things is so important. And like, I feel like it's like this weird post-rationalization phase I've entered where like I can so clearly see like what I'm doing wrong and like I don't do anything to fix it. Like I'll be like, I can tell that I'm hyperfixating on this one person who I'm letting affect my entire mood. Let's not do that. Let's break the thought pattern. Can't. It's like it's way easier to stay stuck where you are than it is to get yourself out of it, even though you know how, you know?
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
All right, Jacqueline. Tell us about
your
tell us about your shit, your baggage.
Oh, well, thank you. I don't know. I'm not formally anything, I guess, but I think my therapist said it best when she said, have you ever thought that like maybe you should like see a psychiatrist and get like checked out? And I'm personally not one to like go get a formal diagnosis. I don't want one. I just don't think that it would help me mentally. I think it would just make things worse. Like I just fall into
I got asked, did you tell your therapist this after they asked you?
No. No, I did not. Yeah, like I just don't see myself going on medication anytime soon. It's not for me. I take my mental health vitamins. I take my mushroom pills.
I'm sorry, your what?
Ashwagandha. It's a mushroom.
Yeah.
There's some good stuff.
Yeah. But she thinks that I have a lot of anxiety derived from my depression. Because when you hate yourself, you just think that everybody else hates you. Part of understanding yourself is understanding at the very baseline how you feel about things day to day. And like situational awareness is really important.
Let's be real here. I mean, we've all like lied to therapists at some point.
Yeah.
Like to downplay things. Like I don't tell the full truth sometimes because I'm like, I sound crazy right now.
Exactly. I think that's kind of normal to do. And I know that I did it a lot when I was in therapy. But I think it's less about having somebody else know and understand and more about like your own personal understanding, which is really scary. Like it's really scary to get to a place, you both were talking about like crying and like being a kid and like having these realizations that like crying wasn't normal. I did not cry as a child. Like I just didn't do it very frequently. And I think it was because it was super like socialized not to cry. And so I was like, okay, you know what we don't do? We don't cry because that's pussy shit, right? Like you don't do that. And as I've gotten older, I've kind of learned that crying is a really important tool because you're literally leaching toxins out of your eyeballs and it's really cathartic. And having the confidence personally to be comfortable just crying has been really empowering. Like it took me a long time and that's kind of embarrassing to be like, yeah, I love a good cry. Like I think I was a freshman in college and I was crying like daily. And I was like, this is good. This is good. But I don't think I had a lot of support from like family in that endeavor because you guys were talking about earlier, like I'm the oldest daughter. Like you're not allowed to be fucked up in any way. Like you need to be like academically perfect and you need to like get a good job so that you can support us when we're old, and you need to be like stable in all aspects of your life.
The most unfunny joke of all time.
And you
Being
don't
a woman.
and you don't realize that it's impacting you until it's like really late and you're like, oh, I didn't realize I internalized that and now I'm 22. Yeah, did that answer your question?
Yes.
What do we think? Is she mentally ill?
I don't know.
The council will decide your fate.
Thank you.
And I mean, like, for me, I feel like it definitely, like, has like affected my relationship with my siblings too.
Yes.
Where like they think, because that's what my parents have instilled into me, and that's the way that I outwardly present, is as someone who has it together, who doesn't cause problems, who never did anything bad in high school. My siblings see that image as well. I feel like I have close relationships with them, but I don't know that they know the full extent of the fact that like I get so anxious that I cry sometimes, or that like I also hate when my parents do that thing.
Yes.
Like, I don't think that they see me kind of as like this like gold standard, when really it's like, I just like don't like to cause problems.
I hide it better.
You like to cause problems, and so you're in constant conflict. I fear the conflict, and so that's why I'm perfect, but I'm not perfect.
It's because that's how all of us have derived attention. Like, we get attention. I don't know. I know Sierra and I, for sure, you'll have to tell me, Jules, we derive attention from being good. And so we bring that into all. Yeah.
I think definitely just in general, like, being raised as a woman, like, that's you have to do
you be
that.
good and people will pay attention to you.
You know, there's just so many different societal things at play, which sucks. And yeah, it does like definitely affect your relationships with your siblings, and like, and you want to have those conversations about it, but you also don't want to scare them.
No,
like,
no.
What you've been through with mental illness, with loving other people and liking other people. Like, what about how you relate to yourself? And I think that plays a lot into, like, you know, being mentally ill and being anxious. Like, what am I thinking about? Do I like myself? Do I love myself? Like, I know I deserve to love myself. That's all we hear in the media. Like, okay, self-love, do all this. But yeah, so that...
Well, I think it's really interesting. I was listening to an interview about season 1 of Euphoria, and less about Euphoria and more about Kat, who's Barbie Ferreira's character, who I love. I love Barbie Ferreira. I think she's really smart and really in tune with herself a lot of the time. You kind of have to be if you're like plus size in Hollywood. You just have to, because nobody's going to give you that support. But part of her character arc is this idea that like you have to love yourself. Like, we live in a post self-love world where like if you don't, you're fucked up. And it's not as easy as just being like, yeah, I like myself. Because it's a constant struggle of being like, well, I deserve the love, like you were saying, and I deserve to care for myself and like give myself the same grace that I give to other people I love. But we kind of forget that we deserve like patience with ourselves, and like everybody messes up. Like, it's super easy for me to forgive a friend who like snaps and like gets irritated.
She's talking about me.
Because I know that like they're going through something, or like it's just like a stressful minute, and like it's not directed at me, it's just situational. But when I snap at myself and I'm like, oh my god, you're so stupid, I don't have the same like grace. I'm just like, yep, you're right. You're absolutely right. I'm just a moron. And I think that it's interesting because you have to take that a step further and be like, okay, but you're not. Like, you're not stupid. Like, you're frustrated, and that's okay. And it's situational, but like, you have to live with yourself forever, and you know you're not dumb. And so I think you bring up a good point of like, how do we hold that space when you're mentally ill, in the ways in which we are mentally ill, to care for yourself, even down to like basic like human need, like drink water, wash your face, take a shower,
True.
get out of bed, wash your sheets. Everybody listening, I want you to go get a glass of water. I want you to come back. I want you to make a game plan for washing your sheets.
They're
doubt you.
disgusting.
They're so gross. I already know.
Filthy.
You guys are just talking to me right now.
I'm talking to myself.
Literally.
And now that we've kind of gone in depth on our own personal journeys, being mentally ill, anxious, depressed, what have you, I think that we should kind of like blow the conversation open a little bit into like the larger world that we interact with as younger people on the internet, as kind of a callback to our first episode.
Hell yeah.
Because it's all connected, really.
Chronically mentally ill, chronically on the internet.
All of it. But I think that it's a very interesting time because we are starting to see a little bit more acceptance of mental illness, or maybe not acceptance so much as like conversation. It's awareness. I would say there's definitely an awareness that it is an issue, or that people think it's an issue.
Very baseline.
Which is like the bare minimum. I wouldn't say that we necessarily live in a country that prioritizes mental health. No. We don't have that kind of infrastructure.
We don't prioritize regular health. No. So let's be real.
TBH.
Yeah.
NGL.
But some of the places where I feel like mental illness has kind of like taken a strong footing have been places like Tumblr, which isn't so prevalent anymore as it was when we were kind of coming of age, and TikTok, which is very big right now. And I think that the biggest part of those interfaces is that teens are kind of making mental illness almost into an aesthetic. And I don't know that that's new.
Not new.
It's very much intertwined in the 2014 Tumblr era. I feel like that, I wouldn't say it's where it started, but for me, that's kind of where I think it like was tapped into.
Yeah.
Where like, oh, okay, other people feel this way, and it's just a fact of their lives.
We're literally putting our diaries on the internet under pseudonyms, and people are able to read those. And I think a good question is, to what effect does that have on young people? Like, is that benefiting us, or is it perpetuating the idea that being mentally ill is cool? And I don't think that it's either one. Like, I think that it is really helpful for some people to read some depressed 15-year-old going like, oh my god, I hate everything, I hate myself, is this normal? And reading that and being like, okay, it is not just me being crazy, like there's other people. It really comes down to stigmatization. I think about this through the lens of the AIDS epidemic a lot, which is dumb, but
not dumb.
It's just not the same thing. It's not equatable, but it is kind of. A lot of gay men wouldn't go to the doctor to seek formal diagnoses because they were scared about the stigma that would surround them if they had a formal AIDS diagnosis. And I think that kind of carries over in today's day and age with mental illness of like, I don't want that diagnosis because I don't feel comfortable with it, or like I don't want to go to the clinic because what are people going to think? And so I think it really starts with destigmatizing mental illness, which I think we're getting closer to. So in long form, to answer your question,
like that would address people being, really like
excited like about getting it
mental
diagnosed.
Illness is cool, and then it's more like it's a
like it's as simple as like when it's not easy to seek help, we're not socialized to seek help. So
we're not seeing people with diagnoses because they're not there. There's no people.
We see like even I, like as a kid, saw therapy as something that was like way too much to ask of my parents. Like, that's not really, like, a reasonable next step for most people. So it's kind of just like, okay, yeah, that sounds like me. Am I going to do anything about it? Probably not. I'll just, like, sit with this. Like, that's me when I, like, have a chest pain. Like...
It'll go away.
I give it 2 weeks, and if it's not gone, we'll consider going to a clinic.
We'll reconsider the doctor.
Yeah. Like, what ways do you guys think that we're, like, seeing the world become more, like, accepting of mental illness?
And I'm on track to be, like, an elementary school teacher, and, we're always talking about, like, mental health and, like, getting school counselors. And so it's just, I think with the more talking of the subject and the more sharing, and it is due to, like, a lot of being chronically online and seeing that you're not alone and there are things available for you. But then you get into like a capitalist viewpoint, like, oh, I'm getting ads on Instagram
For cerebral.
Jules,
Do you guys get those
do you wanna
ads?
be depressed? Or I mean, not do you want to be depressed?
Jules, do you want to be depressed?
Are you depressed? And I'm like, why are you asking me this?
How do you know?
Do you guys get those ads for like
ADHD?
no
Oh.
for like Xanax that you can literally order online?
No. No, my phone knows me too well. My phone knows that I don't like to put medicine in my body. So it knows that I'm too scared to order Xanax off the internet because I don't know.
That's so sketch. Like, I don't really understand when that became a thing.
You can buy Xanax off the
I
internet.
think it's like you can go through a process of getting a prescription through the internet and then get it delivered to your house.
I don't like that.
And I think another thing the internet has kind of socialized us to do around mental illness, is just like using humor as a coping mechanism.
Fuck yeah.
We love that here. That's why this podcast isn't super doom and gloom, I hope.
It's been serious, but it hasn't been sad.
Yeah. We don't like a sob story around here.
It's mental illness in it.
I'm Harry Styles.
Oh my god. Yeah, I think that like the humor rake that we all do for ourselves is a really important aspect because life is supposed to be fun. Like we're supposed to have fun and you're not getting rid of anxiety. It's for the most part, it's
natural
chronic.
human
Yeah.
emotion also. So then it's
Yeah.
a reaction. So it's like you can't completely get rid of it.
Maybe it's Maybelline. Maybe it's my crippling anxiety.
Maybe it's definitely chronic and you're stuck with it forever. And if you can't joke,
How can you cope?
if you can't joke,
How can you cope?
Cheese
Our new
jerky.
single.
Cheese jerky. And I think it's kind of like when you're a kid and your teacher's like, okay, everybody, time to get the wiggles out. Like it's my way of
Yeah.
just like, okay, get the anxiety out, like an exorcism.
Yeah.
Exorcism.
An anxiety
Jacqueline
exorcism.
starts floating.
But I think it's true. Like you just need to like release that pent up like anxious energy. And the best and least terrifying to your audience way to do that is to just make a stupid joke because you'll either get like a haha or you'll get like a oh nice, and both are great.
The biggest thing for me about like the humor surrounding mental illness, I like to see it in the media that I consume.
That was a smooth transition.
It's not smooth when you say that was a smooth transition
Slay.
right after I do it.
It's okay,
But
you can cut me out.
I like to be part of these communities that form around these like maybe really sad or traumatic pieces of art, but like we make it into a funny thing because we all are suffering from feeling that same way, because that's why we connect with it.
I think half that and half like this song isn't sad. It couldn't be sad. It brings me so much joy. It's a happy song.
And then that song is Moon Song by Phoebe Bridgers,
In which I've cried to many times, and I'm like, yeah, this is normal. This is what people do. You got any sad music, Rex? Do you have any anxiety? I've never listened to anxiety music.
What is anxiety?
is that like a thing?
I don't know.
Like I hear songs that give me anxiety. Like is that
Like, would you like to calm
like
my
house
anxiety?
music? Like
I don't know. Like you have sad girl music, but like, do you have anxious girl music? Is that a thing?
And now, for my personal favorite part of the show, where we have our good friend Dylan. Listeners, you may remember him from our first episode, Are We Geniuses or Are We Just Chronically Online? Dylan, hello.
Hello.
Dylan, one of my many mentally ill friends. Right? Is that fair
sure.
to say?
Sure.
Dylan's anxious. Dylan has ADHD.
Indeed.
Those are mental illnesses.
Yeah. So he comes onto the show and we give him 3 minutes
Trey Manu.
to talk about whatever it is that he's been hyperfixating on and going over and over in his brain that he would like to impart to us. And we give him the 3 minutes on a timer, and we can't interrupt him. And
he just goes.
And
then he leaves, and we react to whatever he said. And we also get 3 minutes.
Yes.
Today's timer is Apple Silk. So if Apple Silk is your wake-up alarm, get ready to get triggered. Okay, Dylan, are you ready?
Yep.
Okay, starting in 3, 2, 1, go.
Now, as someone who has my fair share of mental issues and differing ways of thinking about things, I think it's really important that we address one of the main ways a lot of people get exposed to stuff in terms of mental illness, and that is through representation via media. I've kind of been doing a bit of a deep dive research-wise on this because I have consumed a lot of shows that have had mentally ill representation in them recently, and I want to just talk about some of the things I've noticed. First off, I want to talk a little bit about the trope of the mentally ill-coded detective, which has been going on a lot in media. You see it in like the Sherlock reboot by Stephen Moffat. You see it in Monk, Psych, as well as older shows like Columbo and whatnot. And I think it's one of the most fascinating tropes to me because it is one of the first examples where mentally ill people were represented as the protagonists in a story via the investigative process through mysteries and through solving crimes and using their brains kind of like as a superpower. And that was sort of the jumping off point for a lot of later interpretations of mental illness. I think the biggest advancements in terms of good representation have actually come recently through a lot of different kids shows. I think the first mentally ill character that was ever on Sesame Street, actually, Julia, was I know, I'm sorry. Came out a couple of years ago and was sort of a big moment for representation there, and that has since spiraled off into a lot of different shows, including ADHD representation in shows like The Owl House and different variations of autistic coded characters in shows like She-Ra and the recent Netflix one, as well as Marcy Wu and the other Disney show Amphibia. And it's one of those things where it's really lovely to see how different mental illness is being portrayed now, when a lot of older movies and TV shows kind of had it as a stigmatizing force that basically incited conflict and chaos into people's lives. And it's very cool to see it actually being used as more of a superpower and an endearing quality that has to be accepted and understood by the other characters without being necessarily stepped on. And I think there's a lot of room for improvement, obviously, in terms of representation, but seeing someone on a screen that mirrors your own struggles with mental illness can be so validating, and that's why I think it's really important that we're seeing that in cartoons for kids, because that is when you're really getting people to see themselves in the characters that are on screen. And that is the pinnacle of what I think neurodiversity should be. It's about realizing that everyone thinks in different ways, and the characters we see on screen can all solve problems in their own unique ways. And while they may think differently, that doesn't mean they think better or worse than one another. And that's why I think... Oh, there we go. You'll never know what I was about to say. That's
No, we
okay.
will not.
I didn't either.
Thank you so much, Dylan.
Yeah.
Now we're going to react to that.
And I'm going to set a timer for us. Are we ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. I mean, I think that representation is really important in general. I wrote my freshman final paper, because we had to do a big final paper for the end of freshman year about minority representation in media. And a big part is getting representation that's not only there, but accurate. There's a big problem in a lot of communities of creating characters that are representation, but don't actually reflect what's occurring in the world, and pretty much just reflect what white, straight, cis men in big office buildings think those people act like. So when you see people of color or LGBTQ plus people or people that have struggles with mental illness or think in different ways just in general, it can come off really flat and done poorly. And I think that kind of traces its way back into making sure that writing rooms have diversity, Because the more diversity you have in writing a show or a movie or just like music or any kind of media you consume, the more likely that representation is going to be accurate, and the more likely it's going to come off 3D and less like shitty and awful.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. In my media consumption, I'm definitely like a sucker for like trauma. Like even in like comedies, like there's got to be a little trauma. Also, you mentioned Psych. He's neurodivergent, and I've only seen like 2 episodes of
it's
Psych.
Yeah, it's pretty coded. I don't think they ever actually say it explicitly.
So it's not like addressed.
It's definitely part of that trope, though.
The 2 main characters definitely have mental
I was
illness.
just gonna say, like, now
They're
that I'm
also
like
in love.
reflecting on it,
They're so cute. I love that show.
representation. But yeah, like I am a really big sucker for like, I've always really loved like really deep like character driven stories, and I feel like you can't have something character driven where that person has no strife like from like inside themselves, you know? Like I don't think that like outward forces are always going to be like
No.
the most compelling stories that you have to tell, like someone versus someone else. I think that the stories that like I am most drawn to are like a person coming to terms with like their own feelings and their own mind, and like
I think the important part is amidst everything else that's going on, they have to deal
sure.
with that.
yeah. And I mean like that's real.
That's
like
life.
Yeah.
And I do agree, like obviously I don't know anyone that would disagree. When you see someone like yourself portrayed on screen, it's like awesome. It feels really good. Sometimes it hits a little bit too close to home, but you know, like it feels
I love
nice.
it when media calls me out.
Yeah.
And that concludes Dylan's Corner. Thank you, Dylan, for
Yeah,
being
thanks for having me.
here.
And now we're going to eject him from the studio.
Goodbye.
And I mean, I feel like we could philosophize about like the best way to interact with people for people who are feeling anxious or people who are depressed. Like, oh, sorry, I disappeared for a week. I was just really sad.
Yeah.
But like none of us know the right way to do those things
At all.
And I think that that's a safe place to conclude our conversation, with just the fact that we are not geniuses. We are just
Human.
human and
Very.
mentally ill.
Yeah.
Very mentally ill. And on that note, I think that it's safe to conclude what I suspected all along. None of us know shit. Thanks for joining us on our discussion on all things sad and anxiety-inducing. And if you made it through all that, I'm assuming you must like us a whole lot. So please do us a huge favor and subscribe. Tell your friends. Write weird fan fiction about us, whatever you're into. And a huge thank you to Jules for coming on the show.
Thanks, Jules.
Thank you for having me.
I'm one of your hosts, Sierra Parr,
And I'm your other host, Jacqueline Royer.
and we'll catch you on the flip side.
Bye.